Thank you, Christine. Call to order the May 1st, 2024 Gerhart City Council meeting to order. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest from anyone?
No.
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 Dana?
No.
No. All no's. Thank you. All right, we have the minutes to approve. Executive session for April 3rd. I'll take a motion.
I move we approve the minutes from the executive session of Wednesday, April 3rd.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Meetings from the meetings. The minutes from the regular meeting of the city council for Wednesday, April 3rd.
I move we accept the minutes from the regular meeting of the city council on Wednesday, April 3rd.
Second,
I'll second. I'll second.
okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The record for the special meeting of the city council for Tuesday, April 16th, 2024.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from the special meeting of the city council from Tuesday, April 16, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, moving on. Anyone got any questions about the planning commission report?
Yes, I do. Page 5. Under the comments, proponents, opponents, neutral, my comment sent to the planning commission was entered as a neutral comment.
Okay. Now. All right, so we need to make that correction on the, on page 5. And this is the draft information. And if we're going to do that, we need to also go to page 6. At the 4th paragraph from the bottom, it says Connell suggested amendments to ensure road names. I think that should be Garrett. Because Connell doesn't work for us anymore.
She actually attended and testified on this issue.
She did.
Yeah.
Well, then I take it all back. Okay, forget it. Okay, any other questions about the planning commission? All right, moving on. The mayor's report. To give you a brief idea of what April was like for the mayor, this is what I did. I attended a 6-hour strategic planning and visioning seminar with Councillor Gould in Newport, 5.5-hour road trip drive. I met with the 8 members of the North Coast Regional Solutions team from Governor Kotek's office for 2 hours. One of the things I learned was that Highway 26 will be closed for 4 weeks in September for bridge work. I didn't know about this, but that's what Mark from the ODOT department said. I met and interviewed Plosh and HMK members for the owner's representative. I interviewed the water modeler who got the RFP for our new water rights. I attended the Nicanacan Watershed Council talk by Carl Hendrickson on sea level rise on the north coast of Oregon. I was able to access the new NOAA interactive maps that show what will be flooded in 2030 and 2050 in this area. Very interesting maps, especially what you see in 2030 and what's flooded. Wow. I drove 6 hours for a 2-day conference in Klamath Falls on urban growth, expansion, housing, and water rights. After the first day of 8 hours, I had a 2-hour scheduled meeting with the Coastal Mayors Coalition, where I heard about FEMA's new rules on flood insurance going from $500 to $1,000 a year to $10,000 to $15,000 a year for coastal flood insurance. There is also a proposed ban on building or storing equipment within 1,000 feet of tidal influenced waterways coming from FEMA. On day 2, I talked with Deputy Director Doug Woodcock from the Water Resources Department and Kathy Klezek from DLCD, Land Use and Transportation Planner. I met with Chad numerous times about the RFPs, the conference, and other ongoing city business. And how much time I spent on the post office, I can't even start to calculate. Which leads me to say, on behalf of the mayor, myself, the city of Gerhart, I want to say thank you to Karen Posey and Kim for all your hard work getting the mail out by 11:30. Thank you both. Now, I'll go to councilor reports, and I'll start with Preston.
I think the post office is a federal issue.
They're not federally funded. They are a private
That's
corporation.
correct, but what we're talking about here, even though Gerhart has always had its own post office, is that it goes through Seaside, and that is a federal issue. So everybody's, I mean, this is a tempest in a teapot. Okay, you're gonna figure it out, I guarantee you.
Well, I hope so. It's,
Because this town is very well heeled. Okay, the problem is DeJoy and his group.
okay. Thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
Rita?
Well, compared to you, I might as well be sleeping. Well, but I do have a shout out and a meeting. Councilor Sharon and I met with Chad for about an hour, a couple of Fridays ago to discuss the future of the benches, your personal favorite topic.
Thank you.
You bet. And then I want to give a shout out to the city for their Earth Day cleanup, where we got to dispose of things. And I was very happy with the helper that helped me lift 100-pound bag of concrete out of the back of my car because I couldn't move it. So I wanted to thank the city for that, but the ladies at City Hall said it probably was the guy from Recology. So whoever it was to help me lift those items, thank you. That's it.
Okay. Sharon?
I spent 2 hours, a couple, let's see, 1.5 weeks ago on a Saturday at, a gathering of interested parties up in Astoria. Because Clatsop County is tasking themselves with looking at goals 16, 17, and 18 and rewriting their part of that. So they had the first meeting for input from interested parties, which was led by Crest, and Garrett gave a very nice presentation. And it was actually quite a wonderful meeting because there's a lot of interest in taking care of the wetlands. Besides that, I have spent many hours doing research on wetlands, talking to people about wetlands, and looking into the whole subject. Because I'm worried about the property between First and Second and Gerhart along the Neocoxy. That's it.
That's it. Okay, Dana?
Well, I don't have a breakdown on the number of hours that I spent on the post office this last month, but it was a fair amount. Spoke to a lot of elected officials as well as citizens. Went up to the county commission and I wasn't intending to speak on the post office. I was actually intending to speak on preparedness for July 4th and some of the other things we have coming up this summer. But they only gave me 2 minutes to speak, so it became about the post office and about making sure that we got our ballots. Thankfully, on Friday, we did get the call. If you have not heard, on Friday, we got the call from Representative Jabati that we had a contract in place. And I went to pick up my mail today and the post office itself was closed because they're doing an inventory. However, my mail was in my box. And so now it seems that we do have a contract in place now. We need to pivot and we need to continue making hay while the sun is shining. Take our lemons and make them into lemonade because we have name recognition. We need to continue to push on the zip code issue and perhaps home delivery. So that we'll talk on that later. Also went to the meeting that the mayor mentioned, have another LOC meeting in St. Helens on Friday, which I'm going to. It's going to be very interesting. If you can't drive there and if you have the time to zoom in, this will be an interesting one for our city because one of the topics that they're going to be covering is maintaining fiscal health and stable revenue sources. So that's 11 a.m. It's St. Helens through the small cities thing. Reminder, I know that this is probably going to be spoken about later, but the firefighters ball is coming up this week on, Chad, what day is it? Saturday, Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
No, it's muted.
He's muted.
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't get my calendar up. I believe that's on the 25th. Is that a Saturday?
Yes, it's the 25th, Saturday, the 25th. Don't forget to be there, be square, but also remember that if you do like I do, I like to pay my money up front through PayPal so that I can use my credit card and I can get a little bit of airline miles for it. And also I have a record for my tax returns. And with that, I am out.
All right, thank you very much. And now we'll move on to city officer reports. Chief Gregory.
Thank you. Good evening. So not a lot to report today. We don't have stats yet, being the first. Residents need to come in and do just that. So we'll have those for you shortly. Speaking of Perez, he's doing really good. He spent 2 weeks with Seaside. He's actually working tonight, getting a little exposure, learning some things about what they do, and he's going to be able to transpose that over here and work well. He is slated still to have his check ride, which is his final day with an FTO, May 17th, which by the way is his birthday. So that's a great day to do that. And then he'll have a couple of weeks of solo where we don't really shadow him so much. It's more just we're there as a blanket to catch him if he needs it. My expectation is that he will be solo by himself, taking a shift by June 1st.
Great.
I have nothing else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, and the fire chief is not going to be here, right? Because of wisdoms?
Yeah, he just had some surgery that was not really planned, but had to happen suddenly. So I can cover a few things that he had. Again, they don't have the reports done yet. As of today's just the first, but they're working on that. A shout out that I'd like to give is to Division Chief Andy. She has completed the round of new firefighter training, and which she had done on the weekends. And so for the last 3 months, she's been doing that, and that is now completed. So we have some new trained firefighters, not only for us, but for Warrenton, Astoria, and a few other neighboring departments. Also tonight, they are discussing with 4 new volunteer firefighters. So they've got 4 new that are looking to join. One of them is a paramedic. So if that person makes it through that process, that'll be our second paramedic, which is really exciting. And if all 4 are good to go, then that would bring our numbers up to 35, which would be, I think, a record or close to a record for the Gearhart Fire. As far as this year so far, up to date, they are up 30 calls from over this year. I think last month they were still a little bit under. Division Chief Andy and I have a little side bet. She thinks that this year we're going to hit over 1,000 calls, but we'll see. And the winner gets a hamburger. That's it from the fire department.
Great, thanks a lot, Captain. All right, Master of Money.
So some noteworthy revenues in April include a $10,000 payment in 10-0021, which was from Clatsop County to be used for related expenses for fire and first response services. It's my understanding that we plan to use this to offset our overtime cost. I'm not sure if they had extra money or if they just had planned to distribute some of their ARRA funds to the fire department, but they, that's where they came from. Also, quarterly payments came in for our marijuana tax. It's where I think not where I would like it to be, but where I anticipate it should be. A new revenue account was added to 45 state revenue sharing, and it was incorrectly labeled as 400019, and so it's been corrected to 450019. And this was allowed for a private donation to go there, which allowed for the cash award for the student winners if I were a mayor. So I put it in that fund, and somebody had given a donation and put it in there, and then we wrote checks to the winners of the if I were a mayor. During the process of finalizing the proposed budget, staff had an opportunity to really focus on expenditure accounts. Our internal budgetary goals continue to be to merge similar accounts while still maintaining transparency, working to make account descriptions uniform across departments, and eliminating accounts that are not necessary. There were several expenditure accounts that needed some adjustments to assist with aligning with our budgetary goals. So we wanted to make those this year, so that we can have that our historical data will be better reflected. So these types of account adjustments are standard operating procedure and within our legal framework. In fire, there were expenditure transfers from 10-1344 telephone to 1372 technology software. So these were for their iPads, or tablets. We were charging them to telephone, but really they should be down in the technology because they fit better in that department. In water, expenditures from 30-61 system operation and repairs were transferred to 30-47 supplies, chemicals, services and chemicals. These expenditures, it was one particular company that we use on a regular basis, and they were for water treatment chemicals, but we had been charging them to system operations and repairs. So we just moved them up to that account line. Also in water, there was a transfer and a new charge in 30-72, which was for engineering. And that was for a feasibility study on adding a third skid unit to the water treatment plant. So that's really a better place for it there. June is a really important financial month for us. The budget and all the relevant financial resolutions have to be approved. It's how we are primarily funded, so it's very important. And as the fiscal year starts to wind down, it does appear that an appropriation resolution will need to be necessary, which again is often standard procedure. There's still some salary distribution adjustments that need to be made for the end of the year. But personal services and planning will probably need to be adjusted. And we can accomplish that all within planning because the materials and service allocation is, we won't spend all of that. So we can do a resolution to move some of that up to the personnel costs and cover those. And just a reminder that our next budget committee meeting is Tuesday, May 14th.
All right, thank you, Justine.
Thank you.
The city attorney, Peter Watts.
Okay, so a couple of federal cases that I've been keeping my eye on because they could impact us. The first one is the Grants Pass camping ban, which oral argument happened at the US Supreme Court. You can't always tell how the US Supreme Court is going to rule based on oral argument. Though if I were wagering, I would think that it's going to be a 6-3 vote in favor of grants passed. So that will impact all jurisdictions in the United States. The Court of Appeals vote, it was just the Ninth Circuit, which were part of, I could be wrong, but it did sound like there were 6 justices that seemed to view cities being able to police camping in the manner that they wanted very favorably, and 3 justices that seemed more skeptical. Not of that, but rather of grants passes kind of record on that, which were some pretty problematic facts. The other one is a case out of California that they also heard regarding a transportation fee that was a $26,000 transportation fee assessed to a double wide mobile home in a county in California, and it could impact our SDCs. The facts in the case were pretty bad, in that there didn't seem to be that close of a correlation between the transportation fee and the impact on the transportation system that was generated by a pretty modest house. But the ruling was a bit wider than that, and what it did was take another look at Nolan, which is that there has to be a nexus between the exaction and the benefit, as well as Dolan, which is that the Dolan case, Dolan v. Tigard, which is that the exaction must be roughly proportionate to the benefit received. So that was the law with categories of local kind of SDCs, but ones that are like legislative in nature. And this concerned a flat fee depending on the use. And so how the opinion reads is that it really has to be, SDCs really have to represent the impact on the system. So we just have to be kind of mindful of that going forward when we look at our SDCs and make sure we have really strong methodology supporting those. So I think it's workable, but and it was a 9-0 opinion. So it was some pretty bad facts there from our friends to the south. I've gotten calls from one of Governor Kotek's housing people about the PSU population and the impacts that that is having on Clatsop County and other jurisdictions. And it was based off of the presentation that I had done with the meeting that Rita attended, and he had written up just a short blurb for the governor, and she had asked him to reach out and get further information. So it sounds like they're paying close attention. I was able to kind of plug the fact that we're getting a lot of population and our taxes are only going up so much, which is below inflation. And for fast growing areas like this, getting more state shared funds and accurate state shared funds is just critically important. And he got that right away. So he said that he'd be doing another blurb in last week's thing, and he would call me if there are more questions or any more information. And then I guess someone from DLCD staff also has reached out to me through Chad, is requesting a phone call. There's somebody that does kind of the housing policy statewide. So anticipate that we'll be having those conversations. I have one more thing that's not as part of this report, is on the agenda. And it's about annexations and when we're required to do them, and then when we can do them as well. But going through that, I think we just need people to be aware of. As more people are making Gerhart their full-time residents, our staff is just under, our planning staff and other staff are under a tremendous amount of pressure. And in looking at the budgets, our budget's about 1/10 of Cannon Beach's budget. I mean, people kind of think Gerhart and Cannon Beach are similarly situated, and we are not. And our community made the decision to limit short-term rentals. And I think a lot of people believe that was the right decision. They did not do the same. But going forward, particularly as we're looking at public safety, our police, our fire, the amount of calls they're getting, it's quite possible that we might have to go out for a levy, or we might have to have other conversations regarding how are we going to get additional revenue to support our staff, as well as to provide people with the services that they expect. And that might be an enhanced law enforcement district with areas that are inside our UGB, but not inside the city. And, you know, they would need to pay an enhanced fee, and they would benefit by having, you know, if we can come up with an amount that is palatable to them and palatable to our chief, that would give them local service instead of through the county. But we're gonna have to get creative, and there are probably gonna have to be some community conversations around this, because it's getting, the amount of inflation versus our tax revenue is really kind of decoupled at this point. So that's all I've got.
Could you briefly address Cannon Beach's decision to get a bond as an administrative decision, so it didn't have to go to a vote? I'm not sure I totally understood all that.
I think they got a credit loan.
If they got a full faith credit loan, you know, that would give me a little bit of heartburn, to be honest with you. Having gone out for both levies and bonds in multiple jurisdictions and understanding the critical importance of, yeah, and there's some places they'll go with the fee and they'll say that's not a tax, but I don't know exactly how they got the money. It's a full faith credit loan.
So when you have certain organization, I mean, Gerhardt's charter doesn't allow us to borrow more than 100,000 without voter input, borrow debt. But other jurisdictions, you have a debt ratio, so a debt cap, so you can borrow up to that, a certain amount without voters' approval, depending on what your city or your organization allows. So you're able to, by probably ordinance, you're able to impose a certain amount of money on a full faith credit loan, which then you have terms and conditions of payments, but you would have, in, you know, however you're going to pay for it, you would not have to ask voters for permission.
But if it's an ordinance, then voters could refer it to the ballot by giving notice and collecting signatures. And I think the population in Cannon Beach right now is like 400 something people, so it wouldn't take them that many signatures to put something on the ballot if they were so inclined.
I don't understand why Gerhart's even comparing itself to Cannon Beach.
Oh, I don't think
We have no business,
we don't
we have
compare ourselves.
we have no
to other
sewer.
do.
we have no sewer, we have no business. Okay, that's what drives that city.
Right, so I think that the problem, one of the issues we have in Gerhart is we have a very low fixed tax base.
Exactly.
And so which many people like. But if those people expect services, and sometimes people that are moving from the east of us to what was formerly their vacation home becomes their domicile, legitimately moving here, they maybe expect more services. And I think as that continues, and some of those, if we're looking at demographics, the population that are doing that primarily is more retired professionals that might require more services. That's what we've seen with our fire calls. And I think that our police are going to be seeing the same thing. And to the extent that they want services that are more similar to where they came from, they need to understand the severe limitations that we have from a budgetary standpoint and from a staff standpoint. And then we get, when people say, all right, what's the jurisdiction, at least population wise, that's most similar to Gerhart in Clatsop County, they're like, well, Cannon Beach has that. And it's like, well, their budget is 9 times what our budget is, so they have considerably more flexibility in providing those type of services. And I think unless you as a counselor are very familiar with state budget law and the limitations of our own budget, but a lot of people aren't because they've never really thought about it before. And so I think it's just important that we have that conversation. And to the extent that people want enhanced police coverage or other things, there are a number of tools, if this is a community one, there are a number of tools that we can bring about, as well as pressure to the state, that can get them the services that they want, but we're gonna have to pay for it somehow that's not within our budget. So I just hope that people can understand that, and Chad and I have talked about different tools we might be able to use. And also just that our staff is really, really busy and they do a very good job. But I mean, our planning staff is we have so many applications and other things that they're processing, and, you know, code enforcement issues, other things that we're getting. And so if members of the public can be a little bit patient, that would be great. That's all I've got, unless anyone has questions.
Any other questions for Peter? Okay, Chad, you can make your report or not, one or the other, since you're sick.
Yeah, no, I'm good. And thank you, council, for allowing me to do this meeting online. Tom Tees, I see you in there. I got your message. I'll get back to you. I've been out for the last couple of days, so thank you for that. League of Oregon Cities Conference was really good. I think the mayor and I made a lot of contacts for the things that is concerning Gerhart. We had meetings and made contacts with Water Resources Division and just put our faces to our names so that as we go forward in that process, we begin those relationships, and that was very valuable. We also talked a lot about housing and the changes within housing. I will say that while the mayor was in a meeting for 2 hours with the other mayors, I was in with the city managers, and Gerhart's issues that we're going through, these growing pains that we're having, are not ours alone. People were very interested to learn more about the difference between PSU, their population estimates, and what they actually estimated and what is actually happening in Oregon. There is a disconnect there. I think there's a disconnect in most places. And we were hearing a lot of stories about that, but we did also receive information from public safety folks in regards to what they're doing, whether that be utility fees, how they're going to make up budget shortfalls in the future. And that's really what we're concentrating up in Gerhart. At this time, our budget is looking all right, but the future, and if we keep growing like the way that we are, we're going to have to come up with some ideas, and we're going to have to do that through the residents and work through the council. We learned about local option funding. We made contacts there. The capacity building, you know, supporting, we potentially found some money to support in some of the funding, or to fund some of the planning that Gerhart needs to go through. And so we have some folks that are going to help us with that. And that meeting that the mayor and I went to with the Regional Solutions was a powerful start. After we got done with the League of Oregon Cities Conference, I made some phone calls to Regional Solutions again, and they are really interested in helping out our small little town. So I think there's been a lot of good work done over this last month. As far as around town, things are going pretty well. Public Works has been busy working on the chlorinator. They have that ordered and getting that project done. Mark is doing a lot of maintenance on the water treatment facility, getting ready for the dry season. And Miss Christie has been posting water conservation efforts for everyone. But again, I just want to say that anything that you can do to conserve water is good for Gearhart, especially as we are working on our water rights. We will be working on our water rates again here as the budget conversation continues. Code enforcement's been going all right. We have closed 5 cases. We have 6 new cases that we're working on. And so far, no violation citations have been issued for any of those. So we're getting through those with the residents, and that's going pretty smooth. Excuse me. I think at this time, that's all that I've got.
All right, Chad, thank you. Yeah.
Chad, can you just say a little bit about the elk update discussion?
I don't have much to update on that. There has been a few more elk being seen around Surf Pines and possibly into the north end of Gearhart. I was contacted by a writer out of Seattle who has been asking questions about this, and so they're putting together some sort of a story. We did meet with the elk committee, the members of the cooperative, and that was just to discuss some of the things that were being talked about to make sure that we're all aware. But other than that, I don't have any update.
Yeah.
All right. Again, thank you. Moving on, visitors. Melissa Eddy is here to talk about Trails in Park live music permission. Please.
On a fun note. Put this up first. Here. Excuse me, please. Okay, so I have my Gearhart Association hat on, and we are asking for your permission to have a music in the park activity, and that would be August 10th, Saturday. 4 to 6. We like that time because then people could just depart and go have dinner at a restaurant nearby. And see, Chad, we are requesting use of the large white tent for the band and some garbage cans. We will set it up, we will tear it down.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
We should be able to make that work. I'm not sure how large our tent is, but I think we've got multiples.
The tent you have is perfect size. The one that we use for the street dance is perfect.
Okay.
We can talk.
Okay.
If we get permission, that is.
I got a question for you, Melissa.
Yes.
This is for the citizens of Gearhart and not to bring in tourists, is that correct?
This is for anybody who's in Gearhart and wants to attend. As far as promoting it, we're just promoting it within Gearhart.
Okay,
But I mean, if a visitor happens upon Gearhart, they're welcome. It is for everyone. It's not just for the Gearhart Association members. It is for
right.
any member of Gearhart.
I'm just clarifying that we're not promoting tourism. And
No.
that's
No,
our chart.
that's correct.
Okay,
And we uphold that and agree with that. So no,
Okay.
it's for Gearhart.
thank you. Is there any discussion amongst the council? Does someone want to give me a motion?
Do we allow Melissa and her group to have the Gearhart Trails in Park, music in the park, dance on Saturday, August 10th?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Moving on to public communication, written and oral. Anyone wishing to address the city council concerning items of interest not on the agenda may do so at this time. All remarks will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Requests to comment electronically must be submitted by email to the city recorder at info@cityofgearhart.com no later than 4 p.m. the day of the meeting. In-person attendees wishing to speak are required to sign in prior to the meeting. So we have written communication as far as mail. One is from Deanna Monsell, and that's talking about the Seaside Municipal Airport and the need to have it. The request for tie downs on the city's jurisdiction of the airport. And she's claiming that we need to go, or they need to go to our planning commission with a formal request. And if that's the case, I think we'll just, have you passed that on to Garrett?
He knows.
He knows, okay, well then,
He's advising us on,
all right,
no request has been made, but.
okay. And then we have WA Insurance. This is about our recreational immunity, where we got our signs and everything, and that's all taken care of. All right, so now we'll go on to, is there any electronic communication? Christie, did anyone email the city? No? All right, then we'll go to Shannon Smith. Please state your name and address.
Shannon McKenna Smith, 774 Pacific Way, right down there in Gerhart. In town. Okay. Hello, everyone. I on the screen. Hey, Garrett, I owe you a phone call. Anyway, three things I have to talk about tonight. First of all, several other landscapers in town and I are worried about some invasive species that grow on our trees, especially the English ivy. It's gotten to such a point where it's probably gonna kill a few of our trees, especially some of the truly statuesque ones. So we'd like to form just a weekend morning or afternoon for getting a group of citizens together to do a ivy cutting. And there's a couple other invasive species we have ID'd. So I'd like to talk to the council. There's a date for that. We looked at potentially June 1st, I think it is, a Saturday, month out. We could put some information out for people. They need to bring saws, robust enough to go through the little dickens of the ivy, or big loppers like the elephant ones. So that was my first point. So hoping the council would support that. If not, another day potentially where maybe Public Works would ship it and we have a pizza party for them since they're so good. So that's point one. Oh, we didn't hit the timer for me, Chad.
Chad is not on the timer, I'm on the
All
clock.
right. Point two, you can go from there. I also did this Clatsop County meeting, which was great, hosted by a variety of people, Garrett and others, talking about the county's comprehensive plan, especially oceans, estuaries, shorelands, tidal areas, all that. Great group of people, fantastic information about the status of our current ways that code is written and way that the county has phrased things from the past. Big update is needed, especially given climate change and sea level rise. Several big presentations were done about that. So in that vein, one of the things that I think we really should include in any studies going forward is if we don't want to build schools or hospitals in areas where we know there'll be sea level rise, we shouldn't build homes there either. The 30-year, 2030 coming up, there's some big changes. All the models for many climate changes around the world, sea level rise, many of those are already like blown out of the water from the last 15, 20 years especially. So lots changing with that. So that's one thing I'd like to our city to continue to take a look at. And there's a group of us that I think are going to continue to bring it up with the county to see what can be also included in the county information. With that same point, the water rights expansion for Gerhart, I think I would love to have a bigger public discussion about both the positives for it and the consequences potentially for it. It's basically, what, 8 wells we pull from now to all 14. So I think there's a big information need, the public would appreciate about that. And again, if we study other cities who have done this kind of increase and the consequences of the aquifer. And last but not least, what's my writing here? Oh, along with the creek, the gentleman who runs the Mechanical Watershed Council, Noah, I'm not gonna say his last name right. He had stopped by the culvert here the other day, and he's been down to the one near the estuary as well as this one. Apparently the one by the estuary is clogged with debris, et cetera, which happens many times this time of year. So he apparently is applying for a grant to improve the flow down there. And he also looked at our culverts here to look at if it's in the right levels, et cetera. But his grant is apparently going to be quite substantial for many other things along the creek. So I'm speaking with him further about the estuary reserve project as well as then creek protection going forward. And I too have real desire to see as much of the creek protected here as we can, not just because our creek is so special, but our forest along it is truly unique. And we're actually going to bring you some studies about how it compares with anywhere else in the North Coast. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. That's it for visitors. So moving on. Ordinance and resolutions. Next up is ordinance 943. An ordinance amending the city of Gerhart zoning ordinance, section 3.2, medium density residential R2 zone. We have already read this once last month. And if we have a motion to approve 943 by reading once only, then we can move on to something else.
I'll give you a motion to approve ordinance number 943 by reading once by the title only tonight.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, it passes. An ordinance amending the city of Gerhart zoning ordinance, section 3.2, medium density residential R-2 zone, ordinance 943. Second reading is complete. Moving on to old business, the post office zip code update. Now, I don't have anything here except for the synopsis. And I'll read it, and then I believe that'll be it for that. The city last gave an update on the post office zip code situation via the city blog on April 10. We thanked everyone who took the time to write to our state and federal elected officials about the post office closure, and shared with that State Representative Javadi was working very hard with Senator Merkley and the USPS to ensure Gerhart residents would not have to go to Seaside to pick up mail after April 30th. More recently, Javadi replied to citizen inquiries stating his attempts to put pressure on the USPS seemed to be unsuccessful. But that changed because we have our post office and it's delivering the mail to your box. However, as of the afternoon of April 26, shared that Gerhart's post office officially has signed a contract and has on file. Therefore, mail service should continue for box holders beyond Tuesday. That we know. Regarding the zip code as of April 19th, update from Senator Wyden's office, the USPS Manager of Operations Integration is working with the Address Management Department to determine if a new zip code can be assigned. We should have an answer in about 30 days. 97139, it's so easy to do. Also attached is a letter the city received from Congresswoman Bonamici addressing both issues and requesting a response from the USPS. And I'm not going to read this. It goes on in depth and demands an answer in 30 days. Moving on, new business. We are going to be led through a discussion of annexation of undeveloped properties in the city's urban growth boundary during development application process. And this will be by Peter.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry to interrupt, but just a reminder that on your checklist, it states that you have to allow for public comment up to 3 minutes.
I don't have a checklist, so.
You do have a checklist. It's underneath the executive session script on the clipboard.
Oh, you gosh darn it. That's my mistake. Thank you, Christy, for taking care of me.
You're welcome.
All right. So now, stopping dead in my tracks, Peter, you'll have to wait. Anyone in the audience may comment on this discussion over annexation of undeveloped properties in the city's urban growth boundary during the development application process. You have 3 minutes. Please raise your hand if you would like to comment. I see no hands. We'll move on. Peter, will you please lead the discussion?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, hang on. Are you,
I'm just asking if there's a brief description you can give of what.
I just did it. It's annexation of undeveloped properties in the city's urban growth boundary during the development application process.
And how long is the process? Just,
120 days,
Okay.
once the application is deemed complete by our staff.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we had gotten some questions about potentially areas that were inside of our urban growth boundary that might be interested in annexing into the city. My understanding of that is that there was interest in opting into the city's short-term rental regulations. And that the number of votes it would take for an area to annex into the city compared to the number of votes it would take for an area to change their CCNRs, so their HOA covenants. It would be easier for them to annex into the city and thus opt into our short-term rental regulations rather than change their CCNRs to mirror the city's regulations. And so we had received some kind of informal queries about that and whether the city would be amenable. In the past, the issue with one of the areas was that there was a gate. And right now, if you're a gated community, you're not allowed to be in the city. So since then, a lot of our rules around annexation and have changed. There used to be we used to be able to have a public vote, not just of the areas that wanted to annex into the city, but also of the city itself regarding whether those areas could annex. And that was taken away by the legislature. And it was Senate Bill 1573. And it kind of goes through the analysis of when landowner can basically force us to annex them. And then there's a second consideration of when we can require annexation if we're so inclined. And so I wanted to talk about that briefly because we are getting a lot of new development in the city, in areas both that are in the city and also in our urban growth boundary. So if people are receiving city service like city water, which they are, then we can require as a condition of approval their annexation. And I want to be very clear what that doesn't do, because these people have private streets. They would continue in those areas to have private streets. Those would not be city streets. They would not have to be improved to city street standards. There would be no impact to the neighbors that already have a house that's built. So if the property is developed then we wouldn't, they would, if they wanted to approach us for annexation, then we could consider that as the council. And whether that's the Palisades or the Hyatt Highlands or another area in our UGB that isn't currently in the city, that those conversations could happen. And they would pay city taxes if they're annexed into the city, but the existing areas in those neighborhoods, unless there was some application for annexation from them collectively or individually, or there was some other annexation that occurred because the city was interested, they would not be impacted. One of the things that I'm constantly talking to Chad, staff, and others about are, we're responsible for the planning for all those areas. And they're under some sections of our development code, but not under others. So an example will be the short-term rental ordinance. If you're outside of the city, you're not covered by it, even though you're in our planning area. And those neighborhoods are aware of that. So in the past, when there have been conversations with either the Palisades, their concern has been that you have to improve their streets. That's not the case. If properties in there were annexed, then the other question would be, so if we're making it so if you receive city services in the form of water, if that becomes something that we would require annexation, which is not uncommon in Oregon right now, that is something that a lot of cities are doing, because people don't necessarily know what's in a city or what's in an unincorporated part of the county. And whether those properties are in Gerhardt or not, they benefit. Okay. All right, so if you ask them, where's your house, they say Gerhardt, and they receive a lot of the benefits, but they don't pay the taxes. And so that's, some of the other cities have kind of pioneered this, what I would term kind of a island annexation. So it's not immediately adjacent to the city, but it's within the city's urban planning area. And those cities have annexed those properties as they come in for a development application. And so if that's something that the city council would like to do, we have the language ready to go. The question then, well, we could not, if we were to require properties in the islands to annex into the city, we could not require them to take out their gate. So we would, and it wouldn't be our street anyway, because it's not a city street. Neither is the Palisades, but the Palisades is a private street, but they did invitation only, but they don't have a gate. Highlands, private street, invitation only, they do have a gate. So I guess that, and there's some thought if they wanted to annex to the city would require them to take their gate down. But if we want to annex them into the city as they develop, because we want the tax revenue, and the houses that we're seeing getting built in these areas are large. We couldn't require them to take the gate down as a condition because it is a part of their CCNRs. So I just wanted to kind of brief you on the state of things. And also there's some misinformation out there as far as roads, and nothing about the roads would change. They'd still be private roads, they would still be invitation only. We couldn't require them to take down a gate. Whether some properties in those areas become part of the city because we annex them is part of this review, it's part of this development process or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my understanding is there's a new house that's gonna be built up in the Palisades, considerably. I mean, it's very large.
Yes.
They want to annex into the city. There's 4 other pieces of property to the south before you even get to the city limits. So where is the contiguous line for that residence?
So the contiguous line is for them to force us to annex them into the city.
Can we force
Yes,
The homeowners, all the homeowners in the Palisades without a vote?
not if the houses are already built, only if the houses are not yet built. If they receive urban services from the city, and they would in the form of water, then as a condition of approval for the development of the property, we can require that property to annex.
So how long would it take to get the language written and moved if we have 120 days once they give us their,
They would agree that prior to the final building out, or prior to the final inspections and occupancy certificate, that they would have applied to annex into the city.
What's the benefit of them? annexing?
Revenue.
Property taxes,
No, not us. What's
Yeah.
their benefit?
well, police coverage.
Lower taxes also and
Plus
cheaper water.
they would not pay into the rural fire protection district.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
So there's definitely some benefits to them doing it. The language I put in there as a placeholder. And if you guys say we don't want to do that, we don't want to require annexation as a condition of development approval and all of that, we can simply pull that language out of the applications.
I think that it would take the whole association of the Palisades to vote for annexation, not just one person.
If the Palisades properties want to collectively bring us a petition to annex all of them, then because the properties because there are properties that are contiguous to the city, if the collective they or a chunk that are all connected want to apply under this statute, we would be required to take them. If we want new properties that are developing to be annexed into the city that happen to be in the Palisades that aren't yet built, then we can require them to annex into the city. Not all the Palisades, just that one property.
So our police department does not cover the Palisades right now?
No,
Who?
the sheriff. And this is becoming an issue of concern for them. This is a reason they might want to annex into the city. And again, it could be done through them paying an enhanced law enforcement fee, which would then benefit our own people by probably bringing in an additional officer, which would help with our coverage.
Yeah.
Or it could be done by the collective Palisades or a majority of contiguous lots petitioning to annex into the city.
So if just the one lot that's not developed right now that you guys are talking about opts to be annexed by us, so they have police coverage. But
Their next door neighbors don't.
yeah, right. So how does that work with the police? Like if the perpetrator on the one property that you're covering, I mean, what's that?
That we would still assist and go, if there's a crime in action and in progress, we're gonna do what we need to do. On behalf of county, they would come and take over the case, but we would still respond as police.
So you can go on to other properties even though you don't provide police coverage for those other properties?
So in Oregon, every officer that is certified through the state of Oregon has jurisdiction in the state of Oregon. So
Just
we can
curious.
police anywhere.
And they're mutual aid agreements as well. Absolutely. So I wanted to get kind of check the temperature of the council on this. And just also there's been some misinformation out there and also just kind of there are people that could force us to annex them. There are benefits to us getting those properties in, don't get me wrong. But I just wanted people to be aware that our voters don't have the ability anymore to say no. If these properties meet the standards and if a collection of them that are contiguous want to annex into the city, we have to do it. And I can't find another city that has the same gate rule that has had annexation. So I But my guess is based on their CCR, you can require them to do it. And in the past, we've said no because of the gate. And I know that's been a contentious issue for some.
Why is that, Peter? Why don't we want gates?
I think that, I think that there are a lot of people that are uncomfortable with gated neighborhoods because the people want a neighborhood to be part of the city and people want to be able to. And most people don't think about public streets and private streets. And there was the city council at the time of that conversation said, I was not the city attorney, but my understanding is they said, we'll annex you, you can't have a gate. And then the HOA decided they wanted the gate. And then they passed the ordinance that said, if you have a gate, you can't be part of the city, and that is just superseded by this law.
They always had a gate.
Yeah.
Okay, there was 4 or 5 people in the Highlands that wanted to annex in because they were having a real problem with short-term, because their board didn't handle the problem. So they thought that, okay, well, we'll ask for annexation into Gearhart, and then it'll be Gearhart's problem in order to deal with the short-term rentals, right? And at the time that the non-gated communities were exempt from Gearhart, weren't allowed in Gearhart. The Highlands already had a gate. So that was, the history behind that. Okay?
Yeah, so their gate's a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Well, yeah, they just moved that.
Well, I'm all for it.
What are the cons?
Money.
I mean, the cons for us of annexing these properties, there aren't a lot of cons.
Okay.
We have to provide the water in there anyway, we have to provide the planning services anyway. They do pay a little bit more because they're out to our fire department because they're outside of the city. But their property taxes they would pay would be more than to offset that, and frankly, the size of the houses that are being built now are big.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, my objection is, we're having this discussion with the city council here for one individual house in the Palisades right now.
Right, but this would kind of be setting the precedent for how we want to do this going forward.
And that's the other 4 or other 3 lots that are undeveloped yet in the Palisades.
Yeah, but there's 4 other pieces of property between this guy's house and where the city limits are.
Right.
Okay? Right here, it says at least one lot or parcel within the territory or contiguous to the city limits or is separated from the city limits by only one public right of way or a body of water, and the proposed conforms to all other requirements of the city ordinances.
That's for them to be able to force us to annex them. So if they were contiguous with the city, if you as a council said, we don't want to annex you, they would say, we're contiguous to the city. And then the next lot's contiguous to that lot and the next lot's, and so you can't say no.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay, that's not my point.
right. This
My
is.
point
if
is
we wanna-
that there's 4 lots between the guy that wants to annex. Okay? So we don't have a contiguous line to his lot.
Because we're providing urban services, we can require him to.
I think that's a backdoor. I mean, let's get the approval.
If you don't want it, the answer is no, I can pull the language out of the condition. That's why we're having the conversation, just so you can give us guidance. Based on the size of the houses that are being built in the Palisades and the amount of, and potentially other areas and the amount of property taxes that would pay. I thought, given that we had looked at this issue and I could brief you on it and we haven't talked about it in the past. You can give us guidance. Garrett and I can 100% pull that language out of the conditions of approval.
I understand that. I understand the benefit of the city as far as the tax base.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think that, we should have the discussion, or they should have the discussion as to whether or not the entire Palisades, or maybe just from the access road there south, annexes in. But I mean, that's the
That,
whole,
that would be their business to do
that's
that.
exactly right.
Right, but our business is to say to staff, I like the idea of getting the property tax for our city. So I'm all for leaving that language in there. And what we can do is go by consensus. Does anyone else feel it's positive
Yes.
and a benefit?
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
But
Where
my
we got it.
My only concern would be if we end up with a bunch of, say, a bunch of homeowners in Highlands come to us and say, we want to be annexed. Do we annex them also?
So if they're contiguous to the city, then they could force us to annex them. If they're not contiguous to the city, then we could annex them if you wanted to, but we wouldn't have to.
Well, they are
Okay.
contiguous.
Not all the lots though.
No.
Some of the lots are further north.
No, but I mean, the Highlands themselves
Yeah,
are contiguous with the Queens condos and with the reserve.
But only the one strip of houses.
Huh?
Only the one strip of houses, the other houses would be.
The property butts up against,
Well,
So by contiguous, so
it means
say,
continuous line.
but my question is, say the property in the Highlands closest to the condos in Gerhart,
yeah.
so say that property says, yes, I'd like to be, then the next property says, no, I don't wanna be annexed. Then the next property says, no, I don't wanna be annexed, then the fourth property going up the line says, yeah, I wanna be annexed, so what's considered contiguous?
Well, so again, like the contiguous is for them to be able to require us. So if lots 1 and 4 said, we want to annex, the city could always say, yeah, we'll take lots 1 and 4. And then but you could also say we'll take 1 and we won't take 4. If it was 1, 2, 3, and 4, you'd have to take 1, 2, 3, and 4, but you wouldn't have to take 5 unless 5 wanted. So it's like dominoes. Like we would have the option of going 1, 7, 12, 15, 19 and just say, if you want to annex, then we'll annex you. But if they want to say like 1 through 19, we all want to come in, we would have to let them in.
Okay, my only concern with that scenario would be, do we add more, our staff is already stressed to the max, I think. And so does that give us enough money to add more staff to, take care of?
Well, as far as the development, we have to do all that work anyway. So we're not losing anything we're not creating extra staff time through that process, which we are already legally required to do. As far as, at what point would the amount of taxes or fees or what have you generate enough money for us to bring on another officer, it would depend on the number of houses, the property tax revenue they're paying.
Yeah, there's somewhere around 45 houses. I think there's more than that, but I'm just always going low with my estimations. And if they were to come in and all pay taxes as a neighborhood, we'd probably gain at least another, well, possibly another $150,000 to $250,000, depending on how the valuation came in. Let's say 150, just for conversation's sakes. Now, these people are already a part of Gerhart. They already call themselves, they live in Gerhart. They use our parks. All of that money would filter through our general fund. Some would go to police, some would go to fire, some would go to parks, and that sort of thing. It's just kind of bringing that part of the community together. I know the neighborhood itself has kind of been independent in the past. They kind of like the way that they've set up, but I think now with taxes, and I know that another thing that's coming up that I didn't put in my update is that the Seaside, and I don't have all the information on this yet, but the Seaside Park and Recreation Department wants to come back to Gerhart and wants Gerhart to come into the Seaside Park and Recreation District. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. That's a lot of conversations to be had for sure. That would raise Gerhartians taxes by about $1.07 per thousand, just for that. But if Palisades were to come in, it would remove that $7 per thousand from the Seaside Rural Fire Protection District and provide us with a little bit more money to be able to grow as Gearhart has been growing. So there are some upsides as well.
The other is that if we add that population that essentially we already have, our amount of state shared funds goes up. I mean, we have to inform Portland State, of course, that we're annexing these however many houses. I think it's more than 45. It's just in the Palisades, it's surprising because it goes both down to the north and up to the north. Yeah.
My point is not whether we annex Palisades or not. My point is, I don't think it's fair to just annex one lot and not the whole group.
Well, I think you guys would probably agree if the group came and asked to annex.
I think that's up to your buddy, who's the head of the homeowners association.
Well, we can have that discussion based on, I'm happy to have the discussion with the Palisades Homeowners Association.
There you go.
If you as a city are interested, but again, with these applications coming up, I had put the language in, but I needed to have that just as a placeholder, but I needed to have that conversation with you guys to make sure that you wanted to do that route.
Well, we've got 4 saying yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say yes if you had a discussion with John and.
I am happy to have a conversation with John.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, under new business, we're gonna have a 4th of July celebration discussion. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this? Please raise your hand. You have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we move on. I'm going to read the synopsis and then, I don't know, and Chad, are you gonna run this?
Yeah, I'll help out.
Many meetings have occurred over the past several months to collaborate on the 4th of July happenings in the area. Clatsop County Sheriff's Office, Oregon Parks, OPRD, Gearhart Fire, Seaside Fire, and the City of Gearhart have been discussing how we can all help each other to keep the beaches clean, people and pets safe, and still enjoy the 4th. Tonight's discussion is an update on where we're at.
Yeah, okay. Somebody used to go to grammar school.
Yeah, with these planning conversations, both the mayor and Councilor Gould have been involved in these meetings and are prepared to answer questions as well. Dana's gonna do all the answering for me. Chad, you got a discussion?
I can start out with, if you don't mind. Yeah, so this is our traditional 4th of July Independence Day celebration, which is happening on Thursday this year, 4th of July. So I think we'll have good crowds in Gearhart Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the weekend. People will make it a long weekend. What we're doing is our traditional parade through town. This will be Chief Gregory's 2nd parade. His first was kind of trial by fire on that day, so this will be excited to have him. We'll have a full team of people working at the city this year. We're going to have myself, the fire chief, division chief, the volunteers. Chief Gregory is going to have his crew here and ready to go for this. And the fire department will be providing hot dogs for donations. And then we have that street dance that's right next to this. What we did last year with the huge amount of assistance from Councilor Dana was also put some signs around town and start having some conversations on how we can make the impact of the 4th of July celebration better for the city of Gearhart. So we're working on that. Again, Chief Josh is going to be here to talk about this a little bit more tonight, but with his surgery on his mouth, he's going to be a few days out. But what we've been doing is we've been trying to get some of our partnering agencies to help us in the impact, especially as it pertains to what's going on with the beach. I feel really good about our crew and our city team being within Gearhart and with a little bit better, especially police force, than what we've had in the past, because we've been able to fill those positions, and Josh Gregory takes these things very seriously. Things are getting a little bit better. And I think that with the signs that were put out, the general feel around town was things were not quite as bad as they had been in the past. But we want to do that a little bit better. And a few of those issues are the way that the beach is treated by all of the people that come into the coast, and they enjoy the 4th of July holiday. We've been talking to state parks. We've had multiple conversations with them, and they're in a difficult position because they don't have the amount of people within their organization to handle such a large crowd. We've been talking to the Clatsop County Sheriff's Department. They too are overwhelmed. I mean, really, as a public safety situation, it is overwhelming. What we've seen in the most recent past is that the county and their emergency, their new folks that have been in the emergency management side there have really started putting together larger tabletop exercises to start thinking about how we're going to prepare for these larger events. The 4th of July is going to be one of those as well. So with Chief Como and Chief Gregory and their help, we have been contacting these other agencies and trying to better coordinate. So those meetings have started to happen, but they're going to start getting a little bit more intense here in the next few weeks. The other things that we're working on is garbage, trying to maintain the garbage service within Gearhart, and then even provide some opportunities for garbage that comes off the beach, and trying to figure out how we can assist with that. Ordering more signs, using our budget to continue that sign program that Councilor Dana came up with last year that worked, I think, really well. And then making sure that we've got the teams within Gearhart to be working, but also getting these outside groups to assist us. So I want to let you know that that's the conversations that we're having. Councilor Dana, I think, has a couple of other ideas about this as well. But that's what we're working on. We're just trying to improve the situation to take care of a lot of people that come into our community. It is overwhelming, and trying to make that a little bit better. So we'll have more to report next month as well. That's what I wanted to do to kick off the conversation. So open to any questions, and then in Dana, Councilor Dana, if you wanted to add anything as well.
Yeah, I would like to add a couple of things. Throughout the year, because people know that this is, and let me clarify that it wasn't just me working on it this last year. Everybody agreed to it. We had full council support, but we also had Councilor Sharon there, and the mayor was there. We had little difficulties at some of our meetings because we're not allowed to have public meetings outside of, public meetings, but everybody was involved in their way without running into those types of problems. But one of the things that amazes me is that we get letters from people that expect Gearhart to handle the problems on the beach. And what we need to clarify is that Gearhart is responsible for Gearhart. In the same way that the state charges us to provide us with fire protection up around our water tower, in their area, they charge us for that. I think we have the right to expect them to provide coverage for the beach. And the reason I say that is, what people don't understand is last year on July 4th, we had a large group of probably some underage drinkers out there causing problems on the beach. And our chief, a brand new chief, did an excellent job of going out there and responding to it. But what people don't understand, if you're not in law enforcement, all he had to do was go out there and encounter one underage girl that was drunk and then said, I don't know how I got here, and I may have had some type of sexual contact with somebody. And guess what? He's caught it. He's tied up. Our one officer that is on is tied up all night long on that problem. Very hard for him to hand off. And if he can't hand it off, guess what happens? If meanwhile over here next to the school, somebody starts lighting off fireworks and is almost lighting someone's house on fire. He can't go to that. his first obligation is to this city. And what the state has always done is said, we don't have the resources for it, and you guys have been doing such an excellent job, so thank you very much. Well, to me, from my background, that's not acceptable. And then when in our conversations with them they are starting to come around and understand a little bit more about the problems that we're having. But what a lot of citizens don't understand is why that's a problem for us. They think, well, Cannon Beach was able to manage their problem by making fireworks illegal in their city, so it's handled the problem. Well, Cannon Beach has a couple of things that we don't have. Number one, they have the resources to enforce whatever rules they make in their city, and they have geography on their side, as does Seaside. We have neither of those things. But we are interdependent with all of the other agencies in the county. And again, going back to giving the example of him getting tied up, or even our apparatus, our fire apparatus getting tied up, we're so interdependent on each other, we can no longer go and respond and help Seaside or the county areas if they get tied up. So this really needs to be a whole county approach. And that was the reason why I wanted to go before the Board of Commissioners as a citizen, not representing the city, because you guys, the county, or the council. But I would like to see if we could get some consensus on some counties or council support for that position, because that's my position, is that we are doing this as a service for them and they need to help us. They need to give us whatever support they can. And they're doing their job. I think that we as elected officials need to make it clear to other elected officials that this also needs to be something that we're working on up here. And as far as keeping the beaches clean and everything else, I think that they need to be, or I would like to invite them to be part of our peer pressure campaign that we started last year. Because I don't want to see us handle it as a one area problem, because all we're doing then, we're not keeping the beaches clean. We're just moving the problem from one area to another area. And that's really that's not a solution. So I think I said everything I wanted to say. I would like to see some consensus for us. I'd be curious to see if the mayor would be interested in signing a letter that we can send out on our behalf.
Who would you send this letter to? The state parks?
To the state and also to the county, to let them know and to get their emergency management, let them know from the top down that they support any efforts to look at this as a whole county problem, because if we get tied up and we're part of the collective solution in the county, it's not good for them either.
The problem, you know what? But the problem is the personnel, the number of personnel. So Parks has always said, we're understaffed. I don't know how the sheriffs are doing these days, but a couple of years ago, when I talked to Matt Phillips, he was 4 people down. So you can't get blood from a turnip, so.
Well, but here's, remember, was it last year? We went through our ICS training where we talked about incident commands. Well, we have a great emergency manager. They've had some discussions about this, about the possibility of setting it up to where if we had to declare an emergency and go into an incident command, we could do it very quickly, and at that point, we could request some money from the state. So what I'm saying is, let's start to create a foundation. Let's look at this. Let's do a paradigm shift and look at this as, this isn't Gerhardt's problem out on the beach. This is their problem. We're willing to help them on the beach if we can.
Do you know if there, excuse me, I'm sorry. Do you know if there's ever been any written communication between Gerhardt and the state parks yet? I mean, I know that we've asked them, verbally, but have we ever put anything in writing?
Can you answer that for me?
No, we've had multiple meetings, but we haven't put any request in writing for what we need from them. Although you're right, Sharon, they keep telling us that they are very short-staffed as well. But I think that if we keep putting this in the forefront and doing these things, then eventually we're going to start building up a coalition that will be able to handle the situation a little bit better. Or the community can start making decisions to try to improve on this situation.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, I'm always one, I mean, this is the Gerhart City Council. We deal with the city of Gerhart. Well, the city of Gerhart, city limits end just west of Wellfield. Everything else is state parks land. State parks will tell you, we're sorry, we're understaffed and everything. They're part of the highway department, right? When I was fire chief, the fire marshal used to write me a letter or call me up and say, you need to take control of your beach. And I'd say, yeah, okay, well, you guys come on down. Everybody in your office comes on down. You might as well send all the state police down. And you might as well turn out the National Guard. You know, because it doesn't just end at the estuary. It goes all the way up through Surf Pines, clear on up into Fort Stevens. All right? We're trying to do our little business down here, but I would hate to see, you know, Chief Gregory in a scenario like you just gave, right? And not be able to protect what it is that he's being paid for.
Correct.
You know, and that's my big, so what I say to the governor and everybody else is, yeah, we've got a problem on the beach. Everybody wants to come down here. It's a state beach and everything like that. You know, start with the governor first.
Yeah.
You know, and then work your way on down, make her like uncomfortable, and then she makes the highway department's head uncomfortable. He makes the parks department head uncomfortable, and it just rolls on down the line. We've been fighting this thing here since I was a child. Okay? I mean, kudos to the city of Deer Heart and everybody for wanting to do something, but if there's a big issue down on the beach, we don't have the resources. He doesn't have the resources. The county sheriff doesn't have the resources.
Right.
It's gonna take the National Guard, to tell you the truth. I mean, that's the reality.
Okay, so Chief, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion? Because that's what this is, a discussion.
I feel like we already work together very well, law enforcement and in this county, as well as the fire departments do, and then crossing over there as well. We all do a really good job. It is a staffing issue. You know, for all could break loose, and you know, there's so many more people here that could cause some problems. The issue last 4th of July, while that group of people had escalated outside of our city limits, make no mistake, those people were staying in our city. And so it was a Gearhart problem regardless of where they were, whether they're just right outside the line. So I mean, you're gonna run into that. There are a lot of access points to the beach. We definitely need to work together. I have spoke with the OSB Command, Lieutenant Andy Hazenkamp for Astoria Command. He wants to meet with us as well. He wants to be part of that. The Oregon State Police do offer a special type of response team that they have. In years past, they've come to Seaside and ridden on bicycles and through down which Seaside has its own animal, right? But they have special services that they could utilize, maybe not this year. We might have an early start on it this year, but something we can get the ball rolling for future. Saying, hey, it's not so much we want to be Gearhart, we need some help on the beach, leasing the beach. That way we can all work together and have the resources.
That'd be great.
Okay.
We need to be ready wherever it happens, even if it's not in Gearhart, the county needs to
Exactly.
be ready wherever it's gonna happen.
And as Gearhart PD, if there's something going on the beach and the county's involved in something, we're gonna go help them if there's something they need, if they're calling for cover.
So do
You know, and so-
we need to send something written to the state police about this?
Right now, I think just a conversation with Lieutenant Hazenkamp would be the appropriate way to take it, and with Counselor Gould and whoever else was attending, I think that's the best step first, to see what his opinion is. He is the lieutenant, he knows what's going on there, so he would give the right direction for us.
We could just close Highway 27.
They're gonna do that.
Yeah, well,
Separate-
Yeah.
What about closing
Yeah,
the beach?
and Councilor Preston, I completely agree with you. This is not, the beach is not something we want to take on our own. We can't. But if we put these groups together and we try to do, at least start having these meetings, we might be able to make an impact on trying to, holding people accountable. And then the other thing that Councilor Dana has been talking about as well is getting some volunteer groups and helping to support those volunteer groups for the cleanup afterwards.
Right.
That's also a big part. We have a lot of new people in Gearhart that do not understand that, where the Gearhart boundaries begin and end. The beach is part of Gearhart. So they do hold us accountable for that. And they have been kind of climbing our tree over the last couple of years on what are we going to do. I think that there's small things that we can do to make these improvements, and looking forward to working with that team.
Okay, Peter?
I think we should send letters to Jesuit Lincoln, OES, Callan, Lake Oswego, Lake Ridge, Grant, and Central Catholic and say, if your students are drinking on the beach, they will be cited for LIP. Please inform your students and their parents. Because I think there are kids that are coming down. I'm not saying they're all from those schools because they're not, but I think quite a few are from those schools. And if they understand the long-term ramifications of their high school students getting an MIP when they're applying to college, it will have parents keeping kids in their houses instead of letting them go down to the beach. And it'll also keep kids from driving down to camp on the beach.
Do you want that letter to come from you or from Chad or from all of
It
us?
can come from all of us. I mean, it can come from Chad and I. I'm more than willing to write the letter. I mean, I think when I was growing up, at least people would talk about Tillamook County and say, you know, go on vacation, leave on probation. And it seemed like they eliminated a lot of problems that way. And I just think that these people understanding on the front end that in the past, you know, in the past, we may have been permissive or may not have been organized, but now we're doing a multi-jurisdictional approach and it won't be warnings, it'll be a citation. That'll be enough for parents to keep kids in the house.
Well, but again, to circle back to the conversation that I'm trying to have and the paradigm shift I'm trying to create here, you're saying we're gonna write something to them saying we're going to hold you responsible for something your kids do in somebody else's jurisdiction. That would be like us saying, we're going to hold you responsible for your kids drinking in Warrenton. We might have jurisdiction up there, you might be able to go up there and have your law enforcement powers, but is that the letter we should be writing, or should we write a letter saying, hey, if you're in Gearhart, we're going to hold you to this, and then say, hey, county, this is what we're doing, this is gonna be your state, this is a problem, do you wanna join in on this, do you wanna piggyback on this, do you wanna cut and paste this? What do you wanna do, because we're writing a letter on their behalf if we're saying it's about the beach.
I think that both are good ideas. I think if people understand the ramifications of their actions, then that creates avoidance. And also that we're having conversations with the state police and our jurisdictional partners. And right now it looks like it's going to be so it's not about Gearhart. We want to let you know in the Gearhart area, there are conversations with state police in multiple jurisdictions because of the absolutely out of control. I mean, last year felt different. So I think that on the front end, if you think you're gonna go down here and party and that they don't have the police in order to deal with it, you're not dealing just with the Gearhart police, you're dealing with OSP in multiple jurisdictions. You will be cited. That gives them a reason not to drink on the beach.
So
To piggyback on that real quick too, it's something that needs to be mentioned in that, we talked about this, I think it was the 4th of July night.
Yeah.
That, not only will they be cited, parents are gonna have to come pick up their children. Because we can't just release a juvenile, and when they're impaired or whatever. Once we take custody, we have that child, so there's a huge inconvenience for these families to have to go through, and I think that's a great point to make as well.
is that under 18 or?
Yes.
So where do you keep them?
Phone calls, it is a very convoluted process. Juveniles are very.
Police department.
We've used the council chambers.
No,
We've used the council chambers before.
we get the school buses from the school district.
By law, we only have a certain amount of time.
I understand.
And we contact the juvenile department as well, so the juvenile department would have their hand in it.
But I'm sure that this is gonna be part of your greater conversation that you're having, everybody. If this happens,
Yes.
then we need to have these resources and then they'll be planning for that.
Okay, I would like to move along so we can be out of here around 9, if that's all right with
Yeah,
everybody.
I'm fine with that.
Yes, please.
Okay, well, with that, I'm gonna end the discussion.
Wait, so just to wrap up, are you gonna
Chad and
write?
I will write a letter explaining that there's going to be, if people underage drinking in the Gearhart area. Right now, it appears that Oregon State Police in multiple jurisdictions are going to respond to cite people. And that if they're under the age of 18, the parents will have to pick them up.
Okay. And if there's any
And I-
need
and I
for.
also-
What?
I also think that we should write a letter to some of our, the agencies that are connected with us, but give us a little bit more time to work with our partners first. We'll get them on board, and then we can maybe write a letter saying, here's how the teamwork's working, and here's what we're doing this year. And then after we're done with this year, we can go back and kind of study it, do an after action report, what worked, what didn't, and what do we need to do maybe a little bit differently if there were problems. So that's kind of the way I see it going as well.
But we will put out a notice sometime soon about starting to plan for the beach cleanup.
Okay, great. Are there any concerns from the council? Preston? Rita?
No.
Sharon?
All right, no.
Dana?
No.
No? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll give you a motion, Richard.
Second?
I thought she.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Did you
Thank you, Council.
mention Wilson and Beaverton and